Hello, my friends, and welcome. This is Quest for You, my podcast designed to help you find who you are, discover your strengths, discover your passions, and your dream. Discover the life that you would like to live by giving you tools, ideas, things to ponder, and inspiration. Maybe things you have never thought about. And we are here with another episode. And I want to read you a quote that I really like. Strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. And this is by Gandhi. I'm sure at some point in your life you have come face to face with the invisible force called willpower. Just talking about willpower, it sounds like a harmless thing out there that surely we can conquer. But if you've ever tried to stick to something that was really hard, you surely changed your mind about the strong force of willpower. You may have even said that you don't seem to have much of it, as if it was something that was given to you at birth at a certain quantity. I see willpower as a fickle inner force, which I face daily. But when I do, it never looks the same. I have days where it barely emerges. Those are the days that I rule. I'm on target with everything I set out to do. And willpower? I don't even think about it. And then I have days where I feel small and weak. And willpower is fighting me like a wrestler in a ring. Everything is a battle. My mind is not focused. My plans are hanging on a string. Everything I so easily accomplished just the day before is suddenly so challenging. The worst part is when I lost the battle and succumbed to the blows. Then I feel even worse. And we all know the feeling of losing. And losing to willpower is not any different. The indomitable will that Gandhi mentioned, the strong, tough, and determined will, I believe we all have to some degree. But I see it as a muscle that needs to be trained, like our biceps or our quads that we train in the gym. In fact, I find many correlations between body and mind when I think about willpower. Both can be weak and sluggish, or strong and toned, depending on the attention we give to it. And one such attention is training. We often tend to think that our mind is just there. We are born with it and we are stuck with it the way it is. I hope by now this podcast has helped you see that there are a million different ways we can change, adapt, and transform our inner world, just as much as our outside world. In fact, even more. Because if you remember, I talked about the body, and the body is fairly fixed. Talk to some hardcore bodybuilders. They can talk all day long about the battle they fight to make their muscles grow bigger. Or sprinters trying to run just a portion of a second faster each time. The mind is much more flexible. Just think for a minute. You can be on a beach with a drink in your hand in seconds by just directing your mind there. The power we have over our inner world is awe-inspiring to me. Your inner world is your domain. It's your world all for yourself, and you can shape it, transform it, and mold it the way you wish. If we decide to focus more on our inner world, we can accomplish so much more. And today I want to share a tool with you that will help you. I rarely talk about willpower all by itself. Like I already said, it's too fickle. It's not a thing by itself, although the word is thrown around quite often these days. I cannot tell you or myself to just apply more willpower and get it done. In the gym, I can tell you, use a heavier weight and try, and you will pick it up and do it. But willpower is not something you just pull out of your reservoir like secret weapon. In fact, if you have not used willpower much throughout your life, then when the time comes it may be even harder for you. In 2011, 27% of the respondents of the Stress in America survey reported lack of willpower as the greatest obstacle to change. Many of us rely on willpower to exercise, to diet, to save money, to quit bad habits, to overcome procrastination, and ultimately accomplish our goals. I consider myself a strong-willed person, but I have crumbled many times in the face of this invisible force. And so many of you have as well, I would guess. But I strongly believe willpower can be trained. And yes, I wish it was easier. I wish I could give you a secret recipe, a trick or a tool that allows you to draw on more willpower when you need it. And yes, depending on your goal, sometimes willpower can be tricked through distraction, refocusing on something else, or other things you might have discovered that work for you. But these tools may only work in certain situations, for certain goals, and under special conditions. Training your mind to become stronger is one of the most effective methods to build a more resilient will that can face tougher challenges of all kinds. But just like muscles aren't built overnight, neither is willpower. According to the American Psychological Association, most psychology researchers define willpower as the following: the ability to delay gratification, resisting short-term temptations in order to meet long-term goals, the capacity to override an unwanted thought, feeling, or impulse, conscious, effortful regulation of the self by the self, a limited resource capable of being depleted. All of these are precisely the things we struggle with. So when I suggest training your power to will, I'm basically telling you what your trainer would tell you in the gym, that at some point down the road, it will become easier. Easier to pick up a heavier weight, easier to delay gratification, easier to ignore those impulses, easier to control yourself, and more able to control this limited resource better. The one training tool I find most effective is this: give up something you love, you're dependent on, or maybe even addicted to. Or, on a smaller scale, postpone something. Wait and sit on it before you allow yourself to have it. Giving up means saying no to something in order to say yes to something else. Many of us, especially when we are on the road to self-improvement, already have something we either have given up or want to accomplish. Maybe you've given up certain foods to get you to better health. Or you've given up the couch and the TV for the gym so you can become ripped. Maybe you've given up cigarettes, alcohol, drugs in order to feel more energized and focused. Giving up is gaining something in return. Like spending money in order to obtain something. Giving up, sacrificing, saying no. It's critical that we are able to do this so we can accomplish our goals. What is the point of life if we don't strive for anything or pursue something we really want? Always just living in comfort to me is not worth living. It's too easy. It's boring. It's not challenging. And most of all, it doesn't bring me any further. I want to see how far I can get. That to me is living. And for us to accomplish our goals, we need to sometimes give up one for another. Maybe it's time, money, effort, comfort, or certainty, or control. And this can be hard. So to help make it easier, it's best to practice giving up from time to time, especially if you've lost the battle with willpower in the past. I encourage you to try it again. Sometimes the problem is we set our targets too high. It's just like in a wrestling match. We are just not ready to face a huge challenge without having prepared for it. And this is where practice comes in. Define a time frame. It should be challenging enough but not impossible. And then give it up all the way. Moderation doesn't count. It can get too fuzzy to measure and too difficult to control. Just give up something you love, you need, or something you do. And don't worry so much about the outcome. The goal with this exercise is to train your willpower. If you want to name a specific end result, feel free, but don't let it become a burden. Look at it as training, as preparation for something bigger. And maybe you have that huge goal of giving up alcohol forever. Great, but start small, especially if you've tried this in the past and failed. Practice first and see where it takes you. It's much easier on the mind to say that you are giving up alcohol for 3 months compared to forever. Forever is so long. Set yourself up for success. It feels great knowing you can go without alcohol for 3 months. This will then serve as a motivation for you to try something much more difficult, maybe a year or 2 years. And then you can build on from there and do forever. You can give up pretty much anything, but the focus should be on something that is a dependency for you, because that will make it harder to let go of. What I like about this whole giving up thing is that there's usually quite some surprise involved that you may not see right now. And this can be a good surprise in the form of, wow, that was easy, or I feel so different, so much better. In general, when you heavily depend on something, you give up control. That thing has control over you. So by giving it up, you're bringing more balance back into your life. At the beginning, it's challenging because there's this battle going on. But later you will notice, wow, I don't need this anymore. It's not controlling me. It can also be a negative surprise. Maybe it's much harder than expected, or maybe there are some unexpected side effects. But usually these are just temporarily. If you stick it out, the long-term effects are usually affirmative. A need for something you thought you could not live without quite often disappears. And that is the amazing thing. And also keep in mind that the body is extremely flexible and will adjust to almost anything. But in addition, the mind follows along. I can't always quite put my finger on who's the driver. The mind makes the decisions to leave something. The body adjusts. But quite often, I think it starts with the body setting the tone. Such as when you start working out. The mind is not always quite convinced, but usually can be brought on board, especially after we feel better and see some results. So, I want to give you a few examples that you can play with and test out. See how easy or hard it is. And if it's easy, maybe try something else or for a longer period of time. And evaluate, what is this teaching you about yourself? So for example, give up coffee, alcohol, or sugar for a few days or weeks. These are foods we easily become addicted to and think we cannot live without. Whether they're bad for you or not can be debated, but that's not our focus here. Your decision to give them up should be based on how dependent you are on them. Not having them anymore may expose this dependency even more so and show you your vulnerability more clearly. I know people that didn't think they could live without their coffee in the morning or their glass of wine after work. And once they gave it up for some time, they realized they don't really need it and they even feel much better. Also think about giving up a meal for a certain time. Maybe it's breakfast. Sometimes we do things because we have always done them. But is there actually a need for them? We don't often question something. We think it has to be a certain way. I gave up breakfast a long time ago, and just after 2 days felt like this was the best thing ever. I immediately discovered that I don't need breakfast. I'm simply not hungry in the mornings. Memories of my childhood came back when my grandmother made me eat early mornings before school because she felt it was important to eat. This is an example of such a surprise that I mentioned. I thought it would be the hardest thing ever, and yet it was so easy to adjust. Food in general makes it easy to play with. We are so dependent on food and on the times that we eat, and yet our bodies don't need as much as we think or when we think. Nor does it need a ton of complex meals. I can sustain on fairly simple meals. So maybe you stop eating out for a while. Another idea is giving up TV, Facebook, your couch or your office chair, maybe even your bed for a few nights. Give up your car for a while and commute with public transportation. Maybe try not to speak for a day. In the end, whatever you decide, look at your results. What did you gain? The muscles of willpower are not visible like your body muscles, but they will show up when you need them most. But besides the training, there's so much more that you gain. Giving up things changes your perspective. There's insight gained about how you're currently living life. And in that process, you get to know yourself better. And quite often, there's a change that takes place, even if only slightly. You took a new road, you tried a different route, you broke the cycle and experimented with something new. And this adds richness to your life. So try it out. In today's world of abundance, it's easy to live in comfort. There's no need to suffer or to delay. Everything is always available. But when life gets rough, we don't know how to respond because we haven't trained. So I encourage you, give up something. View it as a training tool, a preparation to strengthen your mind and your will for the times when you might need it. With much love, until next time.